Of course, if you haven't been following, if you haven't seen yet, we've got the Jazz Trombone Day, the UNT Conn-Selmer Jazz Trombone Day. That is happening on November 20th. But more importantly is that the submissions are open for the competition. So 30 and under competition for the UNT Conn-Selmer Jazz Trombone Competition. And so those are due right now. That's due September 1st. So we got a couple weeks to go here, but it's time to get moving on these things because we have to have time to get the finalists here for the final round, which is on November 20th. And so we need to get moving. So if that's you and you want to apply, I hope you will. You can find all that information on my website, nickfinzermusic.com. But the submissions are open and we would love to hear from you. So please don't delay. And it's totally free. So if you're a jazz trombonist, there's no reason not to apply unless you're 31 or older. Or you have a record deal already, which is probably not you because there's not too many jazz trombone players with a record deal at this moment. So we hope to hear from you. Prizes, that's what everybody wants to know, of course. First place prize is going to get a King jazz trombone of their choosing. Second prize is going to get a Butler Trombones custom carbon fiber slide, and we are working on a third place prize. All three will get a scholarship to UNT if they want to come and study here. Which leads me to the next announcement, which is on September 1st, the same day that the submissions are due. Also, will be open for submissions for admission to UNT in fall of 22. It's really exciting because every other year I get to search for a new TA, and so that year is this year. So if you're looking for a place to come do your master's or a doctorate and looking for a TA or a TF position, while doing so, doing a bunch of teaching, being involved with the YouTubes, being involved with composition and arranging, with just all kinds of things, teaching lessons, and just helping to run the studio, then we're looking for you. All that information is also on my website, nickfinzermusic.com, so if you want to check that out. On September 1st, I'll be posting a video that kind of walks through exactly what we need, but all that stuff opens on September 1st. So, two things. Jazz Trombone Day competition open now until September 1st, and then on September 1st, we have the application period opening up for fall of 22. So if that's you, we want to hear from you, especially if you want to are interested in being a TA or TF at UNT. So send me an email, get in touch, send me a DM on Instagram, whatever, and we'll get back to you and get you the information that you're looking for, and hopefully we can see you at UNT. And then my last announcement before we get into the questions is about Get To It. So Get To It is the new book, new duet book, and the Get To It challenge is on now, which is, of course, playing on one of the duets with me, posting it, basically. So I have a YouTube video that just says Get To It Challenge, and it has all the links to all of the submission instructions and to download the track, to download the PDF, all of that stuff so you can play along. So I hope you'll consider that. And so the prizes for that is obviously you're going to get a hard copy of the book. We'll send you a hard copy of Get To It, the new duet book. And after that, we'll have a 30-minute Zoom lesson with me as part of that. So the Get To It challenge. So that's open until next Wednesday. The balance between learning from / mimicking the masters while developing your own sound. I kind of think that the developing of your own sound is a culmination of experience rather than really setting out to be unique or cultivate your own sound, because I think that it happens pretty naturally through all of the things that you like and all of the things that you're drawn to, all of the things that you are choosing over time, like certain vocabulary that you choose to transcribe, certain solos you choose to transcribe, the things that you listen to on a regular basis. All of that stuff adds up to your unique sound and your unique approach to the instrument and to the music. You don't have to do that much at first to really get inside of that approach, to find your own approach. Later, so basically, that's the difference to me between studying as an undergrad, studying as a master's student or DMA student. It's like, as an undergrad, you're focusing on getting all the basics together, the fundamentals together, learning bebop vocabulary, learning JJ, Curtis, slide, all of these cats. And then from there, it's like, okay, so what do we do with that information, right? And once you do something with that information, that's what we're really finding a voice, your voice, right? And the further you go along, the more you'll start to think about your voice, and you'll figure out things that you're really strong at, things that you're weak at, things you can double down on, meaning like things that you're good at that you want to make sure that like you cultivate, or things that you're weak at that you want to make sure you get better at. And that is what kind of defines the direction of your sound. And then from there, you can start to make choices to enhance your sound and enhance your approach. So if that means learning about different harmonic approaches, or checking out Slonimsky, or checking out classical composers and getting more into composition and all of that stuff, it all helps to develop you as a musical personality. You can never ever be done with the mimicking part. I'm always trying to play better, trying to play more like JJ, Slide, Curtis, my heroes, and I know that I'm not going to sound like them at the end of the day, but I'm going to try. I'm going to try my best. My balance for that question is, at first, in college years, first 4 years, undergrad, you're going to be focused on mimic. And then getting into your senior year, getting into the scene, starting to play gigs, getting experience, going back to school for your master's. And then once you're doing your master's, that's when you can start to think about, all right, what am I going to really do with this information? How am I going to play? What's my musical personality? All that sort of thing is like a later thing. I always think about it as craftsman versus artist. Undergrads, you got to be a great craftsman. And then as a master's student, you can be more focused on your artistry. How to play vibrato. Concert / symphonic players have a really different sound to me than jazz players. Is it the vibrato being used more in jazz? Let's go big picture to small picture. So in the macro view, the difference between playing trombone in a classical setting versus jazz setting is no different. You have to play with good time, good feel, good sound, good intonation. All that stuff, all that technical stuff is the same, right? What is different is the articulation, the flow of the music, the flow of the eighth notes, and the concept. The musical concept is totally different. So then when we're talking about something micro like vibrato, it's going to be very different. So when I think about it, there's many different ways people play vibrato in jazz. My favorite is like Curtis and JJ. JJ has a very vocal way of playing where like his vibrato is wide and slow, and then it speeds up. It speeds up as the note trails off, and Curtis has a similar kind of way of doing it. And I believe I read somewhere or heard an interview somewhere where he was talking about trying to imitate Sarah Vaughan. It's beautiful the way that it happens, and it's like it has a relationship to the tempo and relationship to the song, and just woo, 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 woo. So it's like wide and slow, and then it gets fast. That's something that, like, when you're transcribing, we're talking about mimicking the great players, like that's the deeper level, right? A lot of people get stuck on the note level. Like, what notes am I supposed to play? How do I play these? What notes is the good notes, or like what are the rhythms? But that's only the surface level. What you really are trying to get out of a transcription is like, yeah, those are the notes, but how are they being played? So I've talked about this a lot. How are they being played? How? Where's the accents? What's the flow feel like? What are the important notes? What's the phrasing, et cetera, et cetera? All that stuff goes into the how, It's not just what notes are being played, but how the notes are being played as well. And so vibrato is a big part of that. So vibrato is one part, Gigi. It's not the main difference. The main difference to me is the sound concept and articulation concept, where in a jazz player, it's more about a flow of articulations. And in symphonic music, it has more of kind of a top-down ta 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 ta, like even think about excerpts, like da da dee da 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 da, the Mozart thing. It has like a top-down approach, whereas like with jazz, it's more of a flow. And so there's other things you can do to change the way you play a little bit. Maybe your slide grip is a little bit different to try to get a little bit more flow, a little bit more relaxation potentially into your music. What's a YouTube video that you keep coming back to? I'll tell you one that I keep coming back to that always freaks me out every time I hear it was the first video where I discovered Elliot Mason. So there's a video of him playing What Is This Thing Called Love, that the resolution is super low, super early YouTube days. With Yannick Wizdala, the bassist, electric bassist. Yeah, he plays What Is This Thing Called Love? And I was like, whoa, that freaks me out every time I hear it. So how do you deal with frustration when something doesn't go your way on a gig? A question to ask yourself, that helps you be in the music a little bit more. What does the music need right now? And I pose that to myself, So sometimes if I'm not playing well, or somebody else is being a drag or something, what does the music need? Not what do I need, because it doesn't really matter what I need. if you're trying to serve the music, if the music is the number one thing on your priority list. So maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I mean, that's kind of up to you, how you perceive the music. I think putting the music first makes it for a more interesting musical experience. I ask myself that question, and then how can I participate in that? And usually whatever frustration there is going to go by the wayside, because it's not about you at that point. It's about the music. It's not about you, and you're able to kind of get yourself out of that mindset, I would hope. What books do you use for sight reading? I use no books for sight reading. Read music, real music, as much as you can. Find charts. There's unlimited charts, unlimited transcriptions you can download from the internet. There's so much stuff. Just read, 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 and then hold yourself to a high standard. This is the part that's missing. You can read, 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 and make mistakes over and over and over again, or you can say, I'm going to read my butt off, and I am going to actually be a good reader. And so when I say what does it mean to be a good reader? To me, is playing it perfectly the first time. That's where I hold myself to the standard. It has to be right the first time, or it's wrong. It's pretty black and white, really. It's a yes or no, pass, fail. Did you play it right or did you play it wrong? That's the standard that I hold myself to, and I started holding myself to it my probably second year of undergrad. I was like, you know what? I'm done with being a bad sight reader. I'm just going to play everything correct. Done. End of story. And when you make a decision like, I'm going to be a good reader, what are the things that a good reader does? Well, they read all the time. They play it correctly. They figure out a way to maybe disguise their mistakes. They figure out ways to recognize like patterns, looking ahead, knowing the rhythms. Like the only time that I really get tripped up, and I'm not trying to like blow smoke or like say that I'm the best sight reader, because I'm not the best sight reader. I think I'm pretty good at it. Recently, way out of practice because of everything, but the only time I really will get tripped up is if a part is copied badly, or if it has really weird like nonsensical accidentals. Sometimes composing and arranging and transcribing is all part of like recognizing those rhythms. Read every day, no books, read music, read transcriptions, read stuff that's too hard, but hold yourself to that high standard. Like, don't just go through it and be like, oh, I sucked at that. Like, go and read it again until it's correct. Where's a place you would love to tour in a post-pandemic world? I've been itching to get back to two places. One is Argentina. I've been trying to get back to the Trombonanza Festival for the last 5 years, and it hasn't happened. And then also Australia. Those are two places that I'm trying to get back to. But in terms of new places, I still haven't been to Japan. So Japan is number one on my list of new places to get to, especially to play music. And they have some great clubs there. And yeah, I'd also love to go to South Africa. I'd love to hear you talk about what your motivation was for starting the Institute for Creative Music. So when I was in undergrad at Eastman, I decided, I had a band, first of all, with my roommate, and we played, it was like a funk fusion kind of band, and we played original hard like fusion stuff, like think Chick Corea Electric Band plus Mahavishnu Orchestra kind of, plus a little bit of Parliament Funkadelic, so kind of in that zone. And we thought we could, at the same time with that friend, I had another friend named Chris Teal, who's a great drummer. We had many experiences as students that left a lot to be desired regarding educational pedagogy within jazz, and that there were some people out there that they would just do the classic thing where you show up and say like, ask me questions, I'm awesome. But it was always like, why don't people have a specific way of teaching jazz that is actually helpful? And there's a lot of materials out there, but none of them actually like help you internalize the music. So we tried to take those two things and put them together, and we created a curriculum and some workshops. And so we tested them out by going to Arizona just with this band. My parents are in Arizona, so we went to a bunch of schools and did stuff. And then so once we got back from that was in like 2008 and 2009. And then we started, we went to Montana. I forget exactly the sequence of events, but when I finished school in 2009, so then 2010, we talked about how different models. So I was talking with Chris, different business models for a group, and one thing that happens a lot in the classical world that doesn't happen so much in the jazz world, but is happening more, is that people will incorporate their band, their group, their chamber ensemble as a nonprofit entity. And so then they can apply for grants as that entity. Like some schools don't want to pay a person, they want to pay a corporation. So there were some benefits business-wise to being a nonprofit. And so we read a bunch of information about nonprofits and then decided we wanted to do something that would kind of create a combination of an outlet for performance and also an approach to improvisation. So the Institute for Creative Music was started in 2011 by Chris and I, and we've gone to Montana. We've done camps in Rochester. He moved to Arkansas, so we did some camps in Arkansas. We've gone to Montana a bunch of times. We've gone to Washington, Arizona. And so essentially it's taking the idea of learning of a language learning process and applying it to jazz. So we do everything by ear. There's no music. We do improvisation workshops with groups of all levels, of all experiences. So sometimes we'll like go work with the orchestra or go work with the choir, and we have some pieces that are maybe a combination of like, it's not straight ahead jazz, right? It's like, it's improvisational music. That's why it's called the Institute for Creative Music and not like jazz this or jazz that. And so what we do is jazz influence, but it's not just that. And it helps us to connect with more students. So like I said, we do it with the orchestra, the choir, the band, all that stuff, and get them doing these improvisation pieces with some like contemporary classical elements, with some jazz elements, with some crossover elements. It's kind of a lot of different things. So we started it based on those kind of experiences. And then we wanted to be able to apply for grants, and we wanted to kind of get into that world and see like, can we function here? Can we build something? And at this point, so this year is the 10th year. In the last about halfway through the last 10 years, we started doing like a performance side of things. And so we added in the Institute for Creative Music Collective, kind of inspired in part by like the SF Jazz Collective or something like that. And so we would pick a composer. We picked like St. Vincent, we picked Prince, and we picked Bjork, like different kind of pop artists, more mainstream artists, and kind of put our own spin on their music for a while. And we're trying to get back into doing some of that stuff. Obviously, the pandemic has kind of changed things and put a pause on a lot of things. But so that's kind of why we started it, was to have access to grants, to have access to like the benefits of having a nonprofit, and just being able to kind of combine and create a specific kind of curriculum. So that the thing that has been happening in conjunction with all that is we have a series of courses. We're actually getting ready to re-release them all, called Creative Jazz Fundamentals. It's an alternative approach to learning jazz right from the beginning. So it involves no written music. It's all by ear. It's courses with play-alongs and all this kind of stuff. And so it's super detailed, but it's like I've talked about with Chris about this, but it's the hard way, like learning music with sheet music is the easy way because you're just recognizing the dots and you just play the dots, right? But what we're talking about is ear training. It's learning to play your instrument. It's learning to improvise. It's listening. It's all of those things. So it takes longer, but we've done it with a lot of students in a lot of places, and I know that the method is effective, but it's difficult for people to buy in because it's not so much it's based on the process. It's not so much based on the result. So especially for educators, it's hard. It's easier for them to show this hard piece that they've been working on that they got a score on, but like our whole thing is like the development of the process, learning how to learn, learning how to learn jazz, learning how to play jazz, all of that kind of stuff. So have you ever had any interesting, unexpected encounters with a musician? I mean, yes. I mean, in New York, this happens all the time, right? Like you run into people randomly all the time. So one unexpected, I was hanging out with Ryan Keberly. We were on the train coming from somewhere, and we ran into Lin-Manuel Miranda, the guy that wrote Hamilton, and I didn't even know who he was, and Ryan didn't say who he was. He was just like, "Hey, what's up?" And blah blah, and he introduced me and this kind of thing, and so he's pretty well known now, but at the time I was like, "Well, who's this guy?" And so it's kind of funny when you realize, oh, that was someone that would be worth knowing, but I was like, I don't know who this guy is. Oh, nice to meet you. It was cool. But there's one. After recording a record, what are the next steps to get your music out there? Well, you got to mix it. You got to master it. That's that. You got to get artwork together. Then you got to come up with a promotion plan and kind of what makes sense for you there. If you're going to shop it around to labels, you need to send it out to those people. If you're going to do it on your own, you need to figure out what distribution strategy you're going to use. If you're going to hire a publicist, if you're not going to hire a publicist, if you're going to print CDs or not print CDs, It really depends on how much your budget is and what your goals are with the project. If it's just to have a document, just have something, then maybe don't spend a whole bunch of money trying to publicize it. Just get it on your website, sell it to your friends and family, use it for getting gigs. That's one type of project. And the other type of project is like, this is my first project and I'm going to get it out there as a leader. And that was going to require investing $1,000 into printing CDs, $3,000 to $5,000 on publicity, all that kind of stuff. So you got to decide basically what your budget is and kind of what you're trying to do with the project, what the goals are, and kind of work backwards from there. You can obviously use something like CD Baby. You can get stuff out there with DistroKid, different things. What's the other one called? TuneCore. So you got to finish the music first. That's the first thing I would do. And my number one thing is to tell you is that no matter what you do, don't try to go too fast. Let the process take its course. For example, if you sent it to me today to put on Outside in Music, for example, we would be looking at March as the soonest of 22. So March or April even. We want to have a lot of time to make sure everything happens correctly and that you have time to account for mistakes and all that stuff. And things don't get released in December or early January or late November because things are just so crowded. Everybody's so busy with the holiday season, end of the year and all that. So I've been dealing with frustration after having an audition. Have you tried to deal with your ego getting in the way of performing your best? I think that just means you care. I don't think you can get through a life in this industry with taking auditions and all of that kind of stuff without having those frustrations, without having those things. The thing that I tell my students is it doesn't really matter. The audition is just a snapshot of you on a day. You're not going to suddenly get better a week before. You can't shed for just the audition in the week leading up to it. Your audition is a look into your essential musicianship. If you haven't been, for example, we just did lab band auditions here at UNT the last 2 days. There's 3 components to our audition, for example. There's an improvisation component where you play a tune. There's a sight reading part, and there's a prepared piece part. So if you're weak in one of those areas, you know that you need to work on that for next time. I think that it's important to remember that as an educator myself, I can say that even when you make a mistake, I learn more about your playing than if you play it correctly necessarily. Playing it correctly is one thing, and knowing that you can sight read well is one specific skill, but it doesn't really define the audition. I've told this story before, but when I auditioned for Juilliard, I was convinced that I had screwed it up and that I would never get in. I was unbelievably convinced that I had effed up my whole life. I was so frustrated. And so I have dealt with this 100%. I walked 2 miles back to my hotel in the rain because I was so pissed about what I had played, or whatever. I just don't think we can't, as the auditioner in our state of fear and anxiety and stress, have an accurate look at what it sounded like. And if it's not a checkbox, at least not for me. Maybe for some people, it's a checkbox, you did this or you didn't do that. You did this or you didn't do that. Okay. For me, it's it's looking at the big picture of everything to determine your placement or what the results are of the audition, whether it's to get into a program or a placement in an ensemble or whatever. It's not just about yes or no. It's not black and white. It's well, these people would play well together, or this person would fit well in this ensemble, this person would fit in this program or would not fit in this program based on these other outside factors, or that person seems like they're working really hard. I want to give them a leg up, there's a lot of factors. So just trying to remember that it's it is what it is. You can't change it. You can't go back. You can only prepare better in the future. And it doesn't really matter, those are the things that I say, to my students specifically, it doesn't matter. However you play is how you play, and if you still haven't worked on sight reading, you're still going to suck at sight reading. Favorite seasonal gigs to play: Easter, Christmas, Oktoberfest, or Valentine's Day? Oh, easily Oktoberfest, if that's included. I didn't see that at first. Oktoberfest is super fun. I used to go to Canada to play Oktoberfest in Kitchener, Waterloo, which was always a lot of fun. I don't really like playing Easter gigs or Christmas gigs. I'd rather do Oktoberfest. And Valentine's Day doesn't really have a themed thing. You just play love songs or something. I don't know. How can you help your band members step up to perform better than they think? So I think if you set them up for success, that means like writing music where they will excel, not like writing with your own blinders on. If your band is already set, like if you're like, oh, these are the cats I'm going to call. Okay, what are they best at? How can you write music that features them? That's like the Ellington methodology. Like, okay, Lawrence Brown, he's so good at all these things. What can I write to make him sound great? That's a great composer that has a band like that can do that. And whether it's a small group or a big band, it doesn't really matter. It's being aware of your ensemble and setting them up for success, because everyone's going to play it a little bit differently. So it's important to remember that like not everybody's going to play it the same. And just having that expectation, just like it's not like a talked about thing, but you just like, you expect them to do their best. And if they don't, you call somebody else. Do you agree with the idea that people should only pursue a performing career if they can't see themselves doing anything else? This is a complicated question. I think when I heard people say this, I was not able to process what they actually mean. Building a life as a musician, specifically as a performing musician, is hard. The value that's placed on someone that only performs is difficult, especially on trombone. If you only want to play trombone, especially if it's only playing jazz, right? Like, so if we're narrowing ourselves down again and again and again and again, it gets harder and harder and harder to only perform. So you'll notice that myself, I don't only perform, teach at UNT. I have a record label. I am a side person. I play with other people. I have my own band. I do all of those different things. If I could have my way, would I love to only perform and like be like my heroes, like Steve Davis or Wycliffe Gordon or Steve Turre, and play with my heroes? Well, yeah, of course I would. But the economic and like industry reality is something different at this moment. In 2021, it is not 1963 or 1959. Jazz is not supported in the way that it once was by the public. So being aware of what that means, and like you're making trade-offs. Like every decision you make is always a trade-off. And if you're saying that you're only going to go into performance because you think you're only going to perform, you're just lying to yourself. You're going to have to do more things. Now, some people don't. And a lot of that has to do with like the lifestyle that they're okay with, relationships that they have, the things that are important to them in terms of their life. I've been thinking about it a lot, honestly, and I don't know that I have a good answer for you. To pursue a performing career, I think is essential. Because if you don't hold yourself to the standard of being a performer and wanting to be a great performer, I don't necessarily see you being as good of an educator as if you also could do that. There are plenty of amazing pedagogues of the trombone, of music, but it's only going to enhance your ability to teach if you are also a good performer. Now, there's also plenty of good performers that are not good educators. Not singling anybody out, but like teaching is a different skill than performing, right? So I don't think it's necessarily the case that you would say you should not pursue a performance degree if you want to do anything else. I think if you want to play your instrument at a high level, really high level, you feel like you want to be an artist and like commit to that, and you are committed to it. That's the thing. You have to be committed to it, and you have to be a type of person that'll figure out stuff as you go. If you're okay with like a bohemian lifestyle, like not making a lot of money, all that kind of stuff, you can just play. In many cities, you can just play. And you can make good money in a lot of cities just playing. But I think most people do a lot of different things. So to just say it's yes or no is very misleading to reality. I think one thing that I like to do is look at the people that I look up to, but that also play my instrument, so that I have like a little bit of an idea of like, is this actually realistic? Like, what are they doing? Who are your heroes? Who are you looking up to that's maybe 5 to 10 years older? What are they doing? There's probably a reason they're doing it, both because maybe they're good at it, they want to do it, and also there could be other factors that like go into that decision of, life, life decisions and things they want to do, and relationships they want to have, and legacy they want to leave behind, or like there's many, many different reasons why people make a decision outside of just wanting to play, And I saw this from some different people recently. There's seasons in your life, like you don't have to do the same thing forever. I think if you are committed to your craft and want to get really good at it, you should be a performance major, because the more you dilute yourself with many different things, the less focus you're going to have. So I have 2 performance degrees, but I've always taught. What do you tell your students about trying to promote themselves when they're unsure about how to present their product? Well, it really depends on what it is. What I tell my artists for Outside in Music is that most people don't see what you're posting. Most people don't see that email. Most people don't see that post. They don't see that video. It's only 10% that see it. So if you got 1,000 followers, only 100 people are going to see it. So you got to tell the story of the thing you're trying to get across in many different ways across many different instances. A few people will see all of it and might be annoyed. But you know what? You're going to have to annoy those people because you got to let the other people know, because some people interact better when it's an email in text form, or some people want to be reached out to directly. Like they want you to call them and tell them about it, or they want a text. Some people want an email. They don't want to be bothered. Some people want to see it organically in their feed. Some people will react to an advertisement, like a social media ad, like a Facebook ad or Instagram. Some people better with listening on a podcast. Some people are better with videos. Some people are better with pictures only, so all those different things. So I always tell the artists, tell the story of the album or the product as many different ways as you can, as many times as you can. And yeah, maybe it'll seem a little pushy. So then you got to blend that in with other content that isn't asking and promoting. So if you're going to post every day for 10 days about one of your posts, then you want to make sure that to surround those, you're going to do at least 10 posts that aren't about that they're about something else. And I struggle to keep up with that myself, but just keep telling people about what you're trying to do, because most people don't know, because everyone's wrapped up in their own thing. They're wrapped up in their own life, they're wrapped up in their own experience, they're wrapped up in their own problems, etc., etc. So just don't be afraid to tell people about what you're up to. Thanks for tuning in. September 1st is the deadline for the UNT Conn-Selmer Jazz Trombone Competition, open to people around the world, 30 and under. We'd love to have you for the final round, so send in your competition recording. If you are looking for a TA or TF spot, a teaching assistant position, I might have one for you next year here at UNT. So if that's you, let's get in touch. Let's talk. September 1 is also the opening of applications for the Fall 22 cycle. So I'll be posting a video soon with all the details. They're the same, but an updated video with all the details about auditions coming up, and lots more about Jazz Trombone Day coming over the next couple of days, couple of weeks. So have a fantastic rest of your weekend, and we'll catch you real soon.